This is Tim. Tim's job is being a balloon. He enjoys decorating parties and loves making children happy. And Tim is very excited to be here with all of us today. Did you like Tim? Raise your hand. Me too, even though it might not seem like it. But why is that? We didn't even know Tim for a full minute. And let me remind you, Tim is not a person. Tim is a balloon made of rubber. What we just witnessed here is one of the most beautiful things about being human. We develop empathy very, very easily. And this is something that a lot of us creatives use in our day-to-day jobs. I'm a filmmaker and writer, and by using empathy, I can make you care about fake, fictional characters, sometimes more than you even care about real people. So it's my job to make you feel like this. I'm sorry about that. For the past decade, I've invented characters and told their stories in fictional podcasts, advertising, and now movies and TV. To succeed at this, I learned some very traditional human skills: speaking, writing, visual communication. And as a mainstream creator in this century, of course, my tool of choice for employing these skills was the computer. I would have an idea, then go to a computer and make it. And we were the perfect team, but also two very distinct, separate entities. My brain was the creator, the only place where human ideas and art could possibly come from. And the computer was just a mechanical tool. So imagine how I felt when computers started creating. Just as I was finding my footing in a notoriously difficult industry, AI showed up and started doing a lot of the things that I had been promised my whole life were uniquely human. So instead of robots learning to do our laundry or our dishes like most of us had hoped, they started writing and illustrating. And they're already at a point where their creative behavior, when studied, is even slightly better than that of the average human. So for the first time in human history, we have a machine that can make things that make us feel. And there is that empathy again. In the past, humans could only feel empathy for other living beings, like people or animals or even plants. Or they could feel it for things that were created or specifically designed by other humans to make us feel for them, like art of all kinds, paintings or sculptures, or any form of written fictional entertainment. But AI is a different beast. It was trained on millions of human creations in order to learn our ways of communicating emotions. Not feeling emotions, AI can't do that, but communicating them through writing or through images, video, and even music. This is either a huge problem, because behind something that seems like it was made by a human, there could now just as easily be a machine. Or it's a massive breakthrough, because things that we used to think needed to be made by a human with a ton of effort, sometimes even suffering, if I'm honest, were now very, very easy. I've spent a lot of time thinking about which of these two options it could possibly be, and here's what I figured. Listening to me for the past few minutes, you might think that I believe AI is highly intelligent. I actually don't. I think it's pretty dumb, but honestly, so are we. At least when it comes to feeling emotions. So why is that really? What is it about this empathy? Well, empathy is our superpower. Actually, it's very useful for us. By easily developing relationships with cute creatures that seem friendly to us, or other humans, we can collaborate and grow stronger together. This is part of our basic human nature. We even invented storytelling in order to use this to teach lessons. If you've ever tried to tell a kid directly and rationally why they need to do something, you'll realize pretty quickly that it's much easier to tell them a story about some character doing that thing. Parents use this, of course entertainers do, as do politicians. By giving a name, a face, and a character to a message that we try to convey, people are much more likely to respond to it. So, how is this done professionally? You might imagine a professional working storyteller as somebody who just sits around at home, maybe drinking or smoking something, and hoping that magic inspiration hits them, and then they go wild on a keyboard and write their story deep into the night. But as you start making your own stories, you'll realize more and more that there are very rational patterns that great storytelling follows. The great American writer Kurt Vonnegut actually figured this out before he even wrote his first novel. Let's check it out. You have two axes. Up and down represent good fortune and bad fortune. So basically, how our character is feeling at any given point. Left to right is beginning and end of our story. So imagine your character wakes up one morning feeling pretty great about themselves, but then they get into trouble, and more trouble, and they reach the absolute lowest point in their lives when they suddenly have inspiration, and they figure out how to get out of it. And they climb and face these challenges and struggle until they finally end up not where they started, but actually as a better person than before. We humans love this story, and we can't get enough of it. You've probably heard this hundreds of times. You might recognize it from legendary stories like The Hobbit, or newer ones like Finding Nemo or The Hunger Games. This story structure is what Kurt Vonnegut refers to as the man-in-a-hole structure. And it's one of just 8 so-called shapes of stories that he discovered when analyzing the greatest stories in history. So what is it about these stories that we love, even when they go down? It's the ups and downs. Characters struggling make us care about them and even want to learn from them. These constraints are honestly also very helpful to be creative. As writers, we gravitate toward these structures. In fact, I'm even using the man-in-a-hole structure for this very talk. Man has a creative job. AI shows up and can do that job. Man questions his life choices. And now we're probably somewhere around here. Unfortunately, we're about to go a lot lower. Because we're slowly realizing that a lot of this magic, creativity, and storytelling uniqueness boils down to a bunch of structures and rules. And what is faster and better at following structures and rules than humans are? That's right. Computers. Now, Kurt Vonnegut was a few decades ahead of large language models, but he did predict them. And today, we can just enter a prompt like this into an LLM. Please write me a very short story outline using Kurt Vonnegut's man-in-a-hole structure. And the AI will do something like this. Now, I don't expect you to read all this, but in a few seconds, it came up with a story about a man named John who wakes up one morning and realizes that his wife is leaving him and selling their mutual belongings out on the lawn. He quietly just goes outside and starts helping her while reminiscing on all the memories attached to these items that he's holding. And it ends with him selling the dining table to a younger couple that reminds him a lot of them. The story completes with him having a final conversation with his wife, now ex-wife, where he realizes that this whole ordeal has given him a chance to redefine himself outside of this relationship. Now, this is not just technologically impressive. Obviously, it came out in a few seconds. But I find it decently creative, too. We care about John. We feel empathy for John. But we have to remember, not only does John not exist in this world, he was invented by a machine. AI is just as good as most of us at coming up with ideas and making us feel with storytelling. And it's much, much faster than any human being could possibly ever be. So obviously, we have a very impressive machine here. There do seem to be only two ways to feel about it, though. Is AI a replacement of us? Should we be fearful because it's threatening jobs and people use it to spread disinformation online? Or should we feel inspired because this is a super useful collaborator for people like me in realizing our own stories without first having to convince some mega corporation to give us a budget for it? But those two feelings, once again, boil down to the same binary. Is AI going to replace us, or is it going to extend us? If we want to use AI well, I think we have to stop thinking about this at all and comparing AI to humans. We just saw that AI can be creative by itself, and that sets off all kinds of alarm bells in our head, which is never a helpful state of mind if we want to find real solutions. So just for a moment, let's set aside this idea of AI as a competitor or even as a creative collaborator. Let's ask it to be the voice of something not human at all. We've all experienced today how good we are at feeling. Unfortunately, we're equally terrible at facts. We simply cannot process them without a good story attached. Now, you might disagree with that immediately, saying, but I spent years in college studying cold, hard facts all day, every day, without somebody telling me a nice bedtime story about it. Did you really? Because I think you were telling yourself a story about how you would feel when you held that diploma in your hand and what it meant for your future. So this inability of our brains to process information rationally is what I believe causes a lot of the problems we face today. Scientists throw important data at us all the time without much effect, and there aren't enough storytellers in this world to build a compelling narrative about each one of those facts in order to convince us to act. But what if we fed that data into an AI and asked it to add that necessary emotion? As an example, let's take a topic that we've faced for the past couple decades. It's a classic at this point, unfortunately: deforestation in the Amazon. We have tons and tons of data about what's causing it and even how we can solve this issue. So if we fed that into an AI and added a simple prompt from a storyteller, we could try something like this. I asked this LLM to represent the trees of the Amazon at the United Nations and was immediately surprised by the character that showed.
Hello, it's great to meet you here in the Parliament. I'm Brancha Deliberata, but my friends call me just Branch. I'm here representing the trees of the Amazon rainforest. We don't often get a chance to talk directly with folks from around the world, so this is exciting for us.
It's Bradshaw. What you just saw was completely AI. The visuals, the voice, what she said. No human decided her name or even that she presented as female. Those decisions happened in a few seconds from a simple prompt. And I believe she could do a decent job if you put her into a parliament right now and let her chat with delegates. This effect, in my opinion, would not be as striking if you just sent a human actor wearing makeup and a costume or had a speech written by a human writer. We do seem to accept her as some strange entity because she makes her own decisions and is able to interact. So imagine if every time we had abstract data to go through, we could literally just give it a name and a face and ask it its own opinion. A committee on water quality could literally invite the concept of water to the conversation. Financial decision makers could speak to their budgets and actually feel the consequences of their decisions instead of just looking at cold, hard numbers. Empathy might seem like something magical, but there are rules and recipes to it that any computer can follow. We can choose to do this with AI, not make our lives even more complicated, but simpler, to help humans and our other fellow beings on this planet. Now, you might think this sounds a little far-fetched and possibly even a little cheesy. But let me remind you, you all cared about Tim, who was just a red balloon. Thank you.